Welcome. Today is January 11, 2015. Welcome to Stepping Stones. We're going to be in Ruth chapter 2 today, and my title for this one is Boaz, a Type of Jesus. So, Ruth 2, Ruth and her mother-in-law Naomi have left Ruth's homeland of Moab. She left behind, she being Ruth, left behind almost everything. She leaves behind her extended family, certainly her mother, because it's referenced, and others that we assume that are there, her traditions, and her gods, and comes then to Israel. This is because of a famine that's occurring in the entire region, and they have heard that there is food in Israel, that God has visited his people and given them food, that there's a harvest. It is the harvest time, so that's the fall, and we see them then have gone on the road, and then at the end of chapter 1, they've reached the area around Jerusalem, specifically near Bethlehem. So just kind of looking at the map, not going to draw on it, but you can see on the right-hand side, lower right is Moab, and they've moved over into the green area near Judah, and this kind of gives you sort of a layout for it. So my title for this, let me address that one first. Boaz is a type of Jesus, and this is kind of interesting. First of all, we use the phrase that he's a kinsman redeemer, and a kinsman redeemer is a very specific phrase that comes from the earlier books of the New Testament, specifically Leviticus gives us some of the pieces of this. And so a kinsman, if you have your kin, your K-I-N, what's your kin? You talk about, that's a good Eastern Kentucky phrase. Me and my kin are going to go down to the river, right? Yeah, family, right, kin. So kinsman is a male member of your family, kinsman, right? And then a redeemer. Well, okay, what does it mean to redeem? We talked about this before, that some of you who are older may recall that you would take, for example, Coke bottles or Pepsi bottles, the refillable ones, returnable bottles, and then you would take them to the grocery store. They're old 8-packs, if you remember those. And you'd go, and then you'd be able to then bring them up to many of the grocery stores, I assume in your part of the country, and they would then give you money. And so Eileen says to buy back, right? They were redeemable. And so it meant that it was a system by which to implement de facto recycling, in that they would be bought back, and the manufacturer would clean them and wash them, and then refill them and rebottle them and recap them and send them back to you again, or someone anyway, to go through to buy them back because they have value is the implication. And so, if you go back and look, the key parts for the ancient people in Israel was the land. The land was absolutely critical. And the land was given to each individual family and little groups of families. It was there for perpetuity. And so if someone had sold the land and couldn't get it back, kind of like picture, if you would, that someone takes something to the pawn shop. I don't know if any of you like me have ever been poor and ever used the pawn shop system before, but oh my gosh, I've used them very often. Amy, you probably remember the pawn shop I'm talking about in Kentucky. So if some of you know what I'm talking about, to go and what happens then if you don't make your payments, then eventually it's going to be sold. If it's something valuable to you that you've lost through the pawn shop system, it's possible somebody else may go and actually buy it when it's for sale and then give it back to you. Well, this is kind of what would happen here. In ancient Israel, if you had your land and your land went up for sale, it was an obligation, a family obligation as described in the Bible, for someone else in the family to go get that land and get it back to the family it was supposed to be in, to redeem it, to redeem the land. And it was somebody in the family, so a kinsman redeemer. Interestingly enough, if you brought the land back in, if there were descendants that were there, you would often get the descendants with them. That would be part of the process, is they would come into your clan. Okay, so you're not just getting land, you're getting other extended family members at the same moment, as a common type of thing. So Boaz is a kinsman redeemer, one of your family who goes to buy back that which has value, right? So that's kind of what that means when I say it's a type. Boaz is a type of Jesus. Well, where does that come from? Well, it comes specifically from Romans chapter 5. And so this is one that you may know very well, but let me just read through in case you don't. So the Apostle Paul is writing in Romans chapter 5, therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, that's Adam, and death came through sin, so death spread to all men because all sinned. So this is the theological idea that we have one ancestor, Adam. Sin came in through that one man, and all of us are descendants of Adam, and that is how we all developed this tendency to sin. We inherited from Adam. Okay? A tendency to sin, I mean, every single descendant has succumbed to that tendency and that temptation except one, and that, of course, is Jesus. For sin indeed was in the world before the law was given, but sin is not counted where there is no law. Yet death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those whose sinning was not like the transgression of Adam, who was a typos. Typos, a type. This is the word in Greek, a type of the one to come. So it says here in Romans 5:14 that Adam was a type of the one to come, a typos. So what is, excuse me, what does that mean? Well, that particular word has to do with striking coins. And so in the picture I have up here on the screen that you can't see, Amy, I have an ancient Roman coin on the left-hand side and some clay templates over on the other side that are used then to go through and help pour the metal into it and then strike it when it's still malleable and soft to go through and do this. And so this idea of a type, when you have a type and an antitypos, antitype. And so the antitype is the one on the right, which is the clay, which is reversed. All the writing was done backwards, okay? And the one over on the left then would be the coin. Well, so when you're making the coin, you make some ones early on. You're testing to see if it works. It's not a real coin. It's often not made out of the same metal, but it looks like it. You can see the impression of it. You all follow? Often they would be testing just one side of it, and so this would be just the front of a coin, maybe made out of a cheaper metal. But if you look at it, you could say, I'm going to put this in our terms, that's a quarter. You get the gist? It's like a type of a quarter in the sense that it is a precast of it and what it will become. So the Bible gives us this fascinating analogy that Adam is a type of Jesus. What does that mean? Well, it's that he has many things that relate to what will be there. It's kind of, we use the word foreshadowing, if you all know that phrase. It's an idea of what will come. And so this is even more than a special kind of foreshadowing. It's where you have a character in the story who shows the traits of what will happen later on. So Boaz is a type of Jesus. He is a foreshadowing of Jesus that will come. Specifically, this act of his being of the family to buy back that which they cannot buy for themselves and buy it back is an implication of Jesus. This is what Jesus will do for us. Boaz does for Ruth and for Naomi. Y'all get the gist? Okay, so that's what that phrase means when I say a type of Jesus. And it's important for you to understand because these are very important pieces that happen throughout the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament, that we see that this is an example of what is to come, that we will see this. And so in that way, Jesus is like Boaz and go from there. Will says it's a concept car. Yeah, there you go. Now you're thinking about it. It's like that kind of idea, right? Okay. How does one become a kinsman redeemer? So it was Shree's question. Great question. You're of the family that's nearer to them, to someone who has need, right? So you're there, and to be candid, you have the means to be able to buy it back. And so there's an obligation. There often is more than one, and so the responsibilities fall into the oldest male relative who's able to financially able to make it happen. Okay, and they measure distance within the family. We're going to see this in the next chapter, based upon number of connections in the family. Which one is quote unquote nearer, a nearer relative? They have all kinds of calculations they do related to that. So that's another comment. Okay, all right, back to the text. All right, so Ruth chapter 2, starting at verse 1. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him, in whose sight I will find favor." Now, this is really interesting because if you read verses 1 and 2 just together, like I just did, you almost kind of get the idea that Ruth is going, let me go to Boaz's field. And by the way, Boaz is going to give me favor. Because the story introduces Boaz, and then immediately you get this and kind of going on there. But it's really not what happens here. If you watch very carefully, she doesn't know she's going to be in Boaz's field, and she certainly doesn't know she's going to find favor in his eyes. And so I think the good reading here is to say that Ruth is saying, let me go find some field that I can go and get food from, and hopefully the owner of that field, whoever it is, will give me favor. You'll follow? Okay? And she says to her daughter, "Go, my daughter." Okay. We're going to intersperse the takeaways throughout the sermon this time rather than put them all at the end. So if you haven't already, why don't you go ahead and grab something to write on, something to write with. If anybody needs a journal, let me know, and I'll be happy to mail one out to you. Let's go ahead and do our first one. So number 1, never give up hope. Number 1, never give up hope. And I even could have thrown this one on last week's. Ruth and Naomi are in a far-off land in the middle of a famine. They have lost her husband, her two sons, and that's from Naomi's perspective, and people are starving around them. It would be easy to give up hope. Okay, it would be easy to simply say that there is no hope and there's nothing worth trying to do. And I comment that to you because there are times when things look bad, and I don't mean just bad, but I mean like really, really, really bad. Okay, and it's amazing the number of people that are even in our church who can tell you about the very, very dark days that they have gone through. In some way, the only way they could get through them, I'm convinced, is just taking one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, maybe 1 minute at a time. I'm just going to get through this next minute, or maybe these next 5 minutes. It's all I can handle right now. I'm just going to keep going, and sometimes I'm just going to keep breathing. I'm just going to keep breathing. And that is very, very important from God's perspective, because even the act of just continuing one foot in front of the other shows a faith in Him. And if you have that, you can be amazed by what will end up happening and where God will use the story and how it will end up. Number one, never give up hope. As we return to our story of Ruth, I put up a painting here. This is actually a Van Gogh. It's of sheaves of wheat. And what you see here in the field is that they have gathered up the wheat in the background. You can see that there's some in the very back that's still green and standing. They haven't gathered yet. And there's some closer in that you can see they've gathered up into sheaves, meaning that they're wrapped together in bundles. And then you can see some of them are laying down. So this is kind of what they would do. They'll gather up together as much as they can. They tie it off with cord, tie it together, and then they go through and chop off the bottom and drag it off then to go to what's called the threshing floor to thresh the wheat, to knock the grains of wheat off the top. The same is true for wheat and barley. And to go through this process. And then there's the stubble that's left out in the field, right? Now, you all tell me, do you think that they get every single strand, every stalk of wheat? Do you think they get every single one of them tied up? Do you think do you think that none of them drop? What do you all think? Yeah, there's some that's left behind. In fact, as a quick comment, I've got some fascinating things I've been reading in the last year about percentages of food left behind in field by modern harvesting techniques. And there's a number of groups feeding the homeless in modern day America that are trying to capitalize on this, because the estimates range depending upon the crop and the season and what happens. Anywhere from 5 to 15% of the edible food is just left in the field. And when you're looking at a huge field, that's a lot of food. Okay, it's actually a lot out there, and so it's out there. Will says for the geese, right? There you go. All right, so there it's not in theory it's not of good enough quality to sell. But or just was too much of a hassle to get those short stalks. It didn't grow to the right height, so the combine missed it, or whatever, or it got knocked out the side, or I can go on. But various types of things, right? So at any rate, this is kind of what happens: is there's this stubble left, and there's some things out there. And in the Jewish tradition, those people who were hungry were allowed to go behind the harvesters and be able to go out and try to find what was left over. So this is what Ruth does. So verse 3. So she set out and went and gleaned, meaning to gather, in the field after the reapers. So she's going and picking up the few little strands that are, stalks that are left. Here's 2, here's 3, here's 4. It's not, you're not going to get a huge harvest out of this, but if you're starving, by golly, it's food. Okay, so there's her stalks and with wheat on the end. So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who is of the land of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." I got a whole commentary going on the right-hand side here about the geese in the field and so forth. Anyway, moving on. All right, so this is a painting of Ruth, what she might have looked like, and this is her out there in the fields, and you see then the other women that are gathering behind, and she's getting these few little small pieces that are there and gathering up in her hands, and she probably can't hold any more in her hands. So where is she putting them? She's tucking them into what? Yeah, she says her belt, such her sash at least. It's around her waist, so she doesn't even have like a bag or anything else to put them in. So she's kind of putting them down inside and stuffing them. She's trying to carry as much as she can, and she probably is concerned that if she leaves a pile somewhere of one she's gathered, somebody else is going to come along and take up the whole pile. So she's got to keep it with her and do what she can, right? So this is what she might have looked like here. Then Boaz said to his young man, who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose young woman is this?" There's somebody out there, a woman he doesn't recognize, and he's like, "Who's that?" And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." At this point, he would have gone, "Oh yeah, everybody in town was talking about that. I remember that. So that's her. Okay." And so then the servant continues saying that she said to him, she said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers." So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Listen, my daughter." Now, obviously, it's not his daughter. My daughter here is just a phrase that's meant for a young woman. "Now, listen, my daughter, do not glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women." We're going to read on that there's a concern, of course, that women who are working by themselves out in the field among some of the other farmhands, bad things can happen to them. Okay, and particularly if they get far from home and they're over in a secluded area, it may not go well. Okay, so the part here I highlighted in red, right, is that she's been working very hard. Why? Well, because she's hungry, and she knows that Naomi is hungry, and this is their chance to try and stock up some food that might get them for maybe into the winter, if they can get enough, maybe at least through a few weeks. Depends how it goes. And so that gets us then to my second takeaway, number 2. A good attitude will take you far. Boaz, well, first of all, the servant was clearly impressed with Ruth because he bothered mentioning it to Boaz. You'll follow? So it impressed, first of all, the servant who was over top of the harvest, and second, it impressed Boaz because this is how Boaz responds to her. So number 2, a good attitude will take you far. Now, I started to word this one to be hard work will take you far, but I didn't want to imply that the Bible teaches you to work hard on your own. That's not what it says, actually. If anything, in fact, the classic one, you all might have heard this before, God helps those who help themselves. That is a directly anti-biblical concept, and I don't personally feel you're ever going to find anything close to that in the Bible, even with a really loose paraphrase. You will find, God helps those who throw themselves upon his mercy. God helps those who give up and depend solely upon God. Those are true statements. But God helps those who help themselves, no. On the other hand, in Proverbs, you do find some very strong admonitions to work hard and do things. So look to the ant, you sluggard. What a great phrase. Look to the ant, the ant's working hard. Look to the ant, you sluggard. Right? And look how he puts away from winter and he does hard work. So it does value hard work, but not in the sense that we want to confuse other things. So I said a good attitude will take you far. And I think that it's important, in our workplace, is it fair that Ruth is starving? I think you're asking the wrong question if that's what you want to ask. You all follow? I mean, this is part of life, is that things happen. And is it fair that it happened to her? It just happened. Okay? Is it fair that she has an opportunity now to get some food? Well, it's certainly, it's a huge benefit to her and to Naomi. And so it's interesting to sort of watch what happens here. So, number 2, a good attitude will take you far. Going back to the text, verse 9, Ruth is speaking to Ruth. "Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping." So don't get left behind. As they're moving through the field, don't get left behind and get left by yourself. That would be dangerous. Okay? Keep up with them. Okay? "Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn." He's a little concerned for her here. Right? I mean, it's okay if you drink some of the water. That's all right. It's okay. You can drink some of the water. Even though my men were the ones who pulled the water, and it's not your water, go ahead, drink the water. You don't have to go back over to the well and draw your own water. Drink some of ours. You're okay. Go ahead and do that. And then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and native land, and come to a people that you did not know before. The Lord will repay you for all that you have done, and a full reward will be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Now, this is interesting because Naomi In chapter 1, we see that she's saying, go back to your people, my daughters. Go back to your people. Go back to your gods. This is a very interesting statement for an Israelite woman to make, if you follow. As I commented before, I think that religion was not a really important part of Naomi's life. How about Boaz? How does Boaz see this entire event that's here? And he's asked, he's helping out this stranger. There's a mandate in the Old Testament to help the alien, that's from another country, who shelters within your gates. The alien who has come to your country, there's a mandate to take care of them. And he's honoring that mandate, and he's also very pleased that she is, of course, taking care of an Israelite woman, Naomi. And how does he see that? Not just in a physical sense, but he sees a spiritual sense to it. The Lord will repay you for what you have done, and a full reward will be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. So he sees her coming into the nation of Israel, the actual land of Canaan, as not just coming there, but coming under the protection of God by crossing the boundary into there. He sees things with spiritual eyes, and I want to kind of focus on that. Then she said, I have found favor in your eyes, O Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants. In the meantime, Boaz said to her, at mealtime, Boaz said to her, come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine. So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain, and she ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. Let me comment number 3. I'm going to put this back on there. I said maybe should have put this in a few verses before this. Number 3, recognize that it's hard for people to come to God. Number 3, recognize that it is hard for people to come to God. This is what Boaz is doing. He recognizes her that she has left home and family and her gods, and she has come a distance under hardship, and she has come a long distance, and that she's coming here to honor her mother-in-law, but there's also a spiritual component that is here, and there's been hardship on her journey. Okay, it's possible the people you will talk to in your regular daily life may not be physically traveling out of a famine to come to a land of plenty so that they can learn about your God and also be able to have food, but they might. Is there anybody on the call today who has come from another land and come to the United States seeking a new life, so to speak? And Kim says, why, yes. There's one right there. And Kim, when you came, were you a Christian? And the answer is, why, no. Nope. And there you go. So interesting in that regard. I think Boaz recognizes some of these sacrifices, and he's telling her that God will reward you for that. And as you see people who are trying to, as we talk about in Stepping Stones, make that next step towards God, recognize that just because you've walked maybe many steps past there, and you see them there struggling with that one big step perhaps, I encourage you to think about the fact that step is hard. And if you're listening to my voice today on the internet, perhaps after the fact, watching this video, we get it. I came to Christianity when I was age 28, and it was not easy for me. I understand, and there are others here that I think can say amen to that. That was something that they, at whatever age they came, certainly had to make a decision and make a choice. And my son David has decided to join us. Let's continue back with the text. When she rose to glean, that's Ruth, Boaz instructed his young men, saying, let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. Now, wait a minute. The rules are they go in a harvest, they tie them all up, right? They're in these bundles. Then they come through with the knives. They cut them all off. They cut the sheaves off, and then they go that, and then you're allowed to go in the field and so forth. And he says, well, let her glean even among the sheaves. And don't tell her not to do that. If she strays in there, that's okay. And in fact, verse 16, also pull out some out of the bundles for her and just leave it on the ground. Leave it. Also, pull some from the bundles for her and leave it for her to glean, and do not rebuke her. And they're like, okay, he likes her. I mean, I could be wrong, but that would be how I would interpret this. Or, wow, he's really generous to her at the very least, right? So, verse 17. So she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And I mentioned those things to you there because an ephah of barley would be several large jars of barley. One of the interpretations of that is about 35 liters, which is about 10 gallons worth of barley. Okay, that's It's a lot of seed. That would feed them through the winter, if y'all follow my point. That was, and just like one day worth of gleaning, she has done very, very, very well for herself, above and beyond what you would normally expect. Then she beat it out. So she doesn't have a threshing floor with it so forth. So she's beating it by hand. She's taking the stalks and beating them against a rock or something, and then hand gathering the grains so that she has the grains together, which they can then roast. Perhaps if they can get something to grind against, maybe they can make flour and make bread. Okay. So she took it up and went into the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also brought out and gave what her food had been left over after being satisfied. So number 4, this is my 4th takeaway. Give to those in need, even if it costs you. Number 4, give to those in need, even if it costs you. So this is something that's important, and you can choose a way that's appropriate for you on how you would like to work with that. We do some things here at Stepping Stones where we use Stop Hunger Now as a way to go and put together food for people. That's a very practical way, and that's certainly something you can contribute to. Another option is that you may have people you encounter in your own daily walk, and you may or may not feel comfortable as to how you feel, or even safe to how you address them and talk to them. But I do encourage you to think about those as people perhaps approach you and how exactly it goes. Okay? So let's go back to the story. Ruth 2, and her mother-in-law said, "Where did you glean today, and where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, "The man's name with whom I work today is Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness had not forsaken the living or the dead." So at least we have a word of praise from Naomi here. This is good, right? Naomi is not going by Mara here now, but by bitter Mara, if you remember that from the last one, right? She said, "May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness had not forsaken the living or the dead." Naomi said to her, "The man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers." So there we go. So this ends our reading for today, and we brings us to the question of the week. How does God want you to be Jesus this week? Missed a verb there, sorry. How does God want you to be Jesus this week? And my point of that is that we are, as we say, Jesus to the world. We are the face of him. We are his voice. We are his ears. We are his hands and feet, right? And so I think it's important to be able to look and be able to say that, there are those around us who need to see Jesus, and they will see Jesus by what we do and who we are. And so how does God want you to portray Jesus and to be him and as his hands and feet this week? Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Lord Heavenly Father, I thank you for the story of Ruth. And I thank you as we watch the story unfolding and we see things in our own lives, places we can help people, places we can glorify you, and places where we can work hard. I thank you and ask you to be with each of us this week and help us to draw closer to you. In Jesus Christ's name I pray. Amen.